Sterile doctor shocked when attending to a man who says, "Mom, I've always wanted to meet you." Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Rebecca, a dedicated and overworked obstetrician, couldn't wait for her shift to end on a particularly hot night. She loved her job but was exhausted from handling numerous deliveries that day. Ironically, due to a severe medical condition in her youth, she had to have her uterus removed, which now felt like a heavy burden. Adoption was an option, but her hectic schedule made it impossible for now. At 2 a.m., she finally prepared to leave the hospital. Rebecca packed her belongings and headed to her car parked on a quiet street nearby, as there were no spaces available in the hospital's parking lot that morning. The night security guard offered to escort her, but she declined, saying it was just 2 blocks away and there was no one around at that hour. Rebecca walked calmly, but still checked her surroundings to ensure everything was safe. Finally, she spotted her car and felt relieved. She was about to start the car when a loud bang on the rear startled her. She didn't see who or what caused it, thinking it could be an animal or, worse, someone trying to get in. Starting the engine, she saw a poorly dressed, dirty man knocking on her window. Panicked, she saw he wasn't speaking, just knocking with one hand while the other touched his chest and neck. Instinctively, she drove away immediately. As she sped off, she noticed the man drop to his knees and collapse. Rebecca wondered if he needed help or was pretending. Her compassionate nature as a doctor weighed heavily on her decision, and she decided to help the man. She turned the car around and drove back, praying quietly for protection. Gathering courage, she opened the car door and approached the man. She checked his vital signs and found he was indeed unconscious. Noticing he was clutching his throat, she saw that it was swollen. Rebecca mustered her strength, lifted the thin, shorter man, and performed first aid, thinking he was choking. After a short time, he expelled what appeared to be a piece of plastic from his mouth. Exhausted, Rebecca gently laid the man back on the ground, hearing him cough and breathe deeply. "Thank you," he said. Rebecca asked how he felt, and though he tried to speak, the words wouldn't come out. She took a risk and asked him to accompany her to the hospital. She opened the car door, and the man got in. She drove 2 blocks back to the hospital, where the security guard was suspicious but helped the man into a wheelchair after Rebecca explained everything. She escorted him to the emergency room and left him with the on-duty doctor, finally able to go home. After a sleepless night, Rebecca fell asleep on her sofa without even showering. The next day, after freshening up, she went to the supermarket and then back to the hospital to check on the man she had helped. She saw him exiting the hospital, having been discharged. "Hello, how are you?" she asked. "I'm fine. Thank you for helping me yesterday. I'm sorry for scaring you." "I was desperate," he said. "My name is David." "Thank you again." Rebecca accompanied David through the parking lot, learning he wasn't homeless but living in severe hardship in a nearby community. He hadn't had a decent meal in days and had choked on some discarded food. "Wait a moment, I have something for you," said Rebecca. She went to her car and gave him some groceries. David was overwhelmed with gratitude, thanking her repeatedly before they parted ways. Rebecca returned to the hospital to speak with some colleagues before heading home for a few days off. 3 months later, Rebecca continued her routine, often working night shifts. She complained to the hospital administration about the lack of exclusive parking spaces for doctors, frequently having to park elsewhere and walk to her car in the early hours. Nothing had happened until one night, around 3 a.m., she was confronted by 3 men. Scared, she wanted to scream, but one threatened her. They took her purse and demanded she drive them. As they approached the car, David appeared, noticing her distress and told them to back off. Unfortunately, his intervention failed, and the men beat him severely. Rebecca screamed for them to stop, which finally drew the attention of passers-by who came to help, causing the attackers to flee, leaving behind Rebecca's purse and phone. Concerned for David, she took him to the hospital as she had before. After several hours, the doctor said he was not gravely injured, but would need to stay for a few days due to his injuries. Rebecca was extremely grateful for David saving her life and did what she could to help him while he was hospitalized. Her colleagues found it fascinating how she saved his life, and later he saved hers. They decided to document the story and took a photo of the two, giving it to them as a keepsake. Rebecca went to work the next day to check on David, but found he had been discharged. She hoped he would show up near the hospital again, and even drove around the streets at night looking for him, but never saw him again. She wanted to thank the brave man who had little, but was rich in courage. 13 years later, on a hot afternoon, Ethan, now 18, was tired and wanted to go home but needed to shine more shoes to earn money for food. Orphaned, he lived alone, always with a smile and hope for a better future. As the sun set, Ethan took his usual route past the hospital, looking for a specific woman. There goes my mother, he thought. For days, he had stopped in front of the hospital, hoping to see her. Once, he pretended to be sick to get in but didn't find her. Back home, he lay in bed, thinking about how to approach her, fearing rejection since she had abandoned him at birth. By chance, one day, while shining shoes, he saw her pass by. Ethan immediately ran to follow her, seeing her enter the hospital in a white coat. His mother was a doctor. Despite his poor financial state, he didn't want money, just to meet and talk to her. But fear held him back, thinking she might reject him again as an adult. If she didn't want me when I was born, why would she want me now? He pondered. Desperate to learn more, Ethan asked a friend with a motorcycle to help him find out where she lived. Knowing her schedule, Ethan and his friend followed her home. It was a beautiful house, and Ethan cried when he saw who came out. A nanny exited first, then the doctor with a child she kissed lovingly. Ethan felt jealous, never having a mother's love and now being alone. He asked his friend to take him back home, devastated by the sight of her with another child. She had another child but abandoned me, he thought bitterly. Heartbroken, he never returned to the hospital or her house, feeling unloved by anyone. Days passed as he tried to forget her, but fate had more surprises. Ethan finally got a steady job near her house. Happy with his better earnings, he risked seeing her around. One day, while working at the print shop, his mother walked in. His heart raced as he tried to stay calm. "Good morning. Can you make some copies of this document?" she asked. "Good morning. I'll do it right away," he replied. While copying her ID, he discovered her name, Rebecca. Rebecca was the name of the woman who abandoned him, yet had another child later. Ethan wanted to feel anger but couldn't. After she left, he continued his routine. Months later, one night at 10 p.m., Ethan was too tired and stranded due to a bus strike, with no money for a taxi. He decided to walk home, passing by Rebecca's house and noticing lights inside. Curious, he saw her asleep on the couch and found it odd. Returning to the street, he saw a parked car with something strange inside. Peering through the dark windows, he was shocked to see a baby inside, seemingly sleeping. Desperate, Ethan ran to Rebecca's house, banging on the door. Drowsy, Rebecca didn't realize the danger of opening the door to a stranger, but did so anyway. "Mom, I always wanted to meet you, but there's a child trapped in the car," Ethan blurted out. Rebecca was shocked to be called Mom, but immediately rushed to save her child. She had been so exhausted from work that she forgot her baby in the car and fell asleep on the couch. Crying as she saw her baby not breathing, she rushed inside with Ethan following. Her years of medical experience saved the baby's life as it coughed and cried, to her immense relief. Rebecca rushed to take her baby for further exams, asking Ethan to come along to thank him. "If you hadn't seen him, he might not have survived. Thank you so much. You saved my son's life," she said. Ethan remained silent, looking serious. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Ethan took out a photo from his wallet and handed it to Rebecca. She smiled broadly, recognizing it. "Oh my God, it's been so many years. Do you know David? I'm very grateful to him. He once saved my life, but I never saw him again," said Rebecca. Ethan, even more confused, asked directly, "Are you my mother?" Rebecca laughed heartily. "Where did you get that idea, young man? I wish I could be the mother of such a handsome boy, but I can't have children. I was born sterile. My son is adopted. Why did you think I was your mother?" Ethan, embarrassed, nervously laughed. "Oh my God, I've spent months thinking you were my mother. I'm so ashamed. David was my father. He died a few years ago, and I was raised by a friend of his. When I turned 18, I left and lived alone. My father never spoke of my mother and didn't want me to know her. He only said she left shortly after I was born. I've always wanted to know her name or where she was, but I was only registered in his name. After he passed away, I found a photo among his things, a rare keepsake for us. In it, you were with him, and in the background, there was a hospital nursery. I assumed you were with my mother on the day I was born. Months ago, I saw you entering the hospital. You looked just like the woman in the photo, so I thought you were my mother, Ethan explained. Rebecca felt sympathy and said, "I'm sorry, but that photo was taken the day your father saved me from some thugs. Both you and your father saved my life, and now you've saved my son's. Is there anything I can do for you? This is one of the few public hospitals in the area. If you were born here, I can find your mother's name." Rebecca checked the birth records from the date Ethan was born and found his mother's name. Overjoyed, Ethan had tears in his eyes. After Rebecca's baby was discharged, she offered Ethan a ride home. He searched for his mother online and discovered she worked at a nearby restaurant. Ethan and Rebecca became regular friends, often meeting for meals, with their bond growing stronger each day. She encouraged him to be a better person. One day, Ethan finally wanted to meet his mother, and Rebecca took him to the restaurant. He sat and quickly introduced himself. "I'm David's son," he said. "Wow, I didn't expect that. You've grown a lot, kid. I'm short, and so was your dad. You're not looking for money, are you? I'm in debt to many people." "You seem grown up," said his mother. "No, I don't want anything," Ethan replied sadly. "Okay, I need to serve other tables. Take care, kid," she said. Ethan left the restaurant and found Rebecca waiting in her car. He broke down in her arms, recounting the encounter. "Maybe your father knew she'd treat you like this and never wanted you to find her," Rebecca said. He was devastated for days but had Rebecca's support, growing attached to her. She advised him to focus on himself and his future. "The only person who can't leave you is yourself," she said. With Rebecca's borrowed books, Ethan studied hard and got into a university. 10 years later, Ethan was a psychologist, leaving his office when he got a call from his wife, who was in labor. Rushing to the hospital, he found Rebecca holding his newborn daughter. "She's a beautiful girl," she said. Ethan was emotional, seeing the woman he now considered his mother cradling his child. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.